this computer. Cool. All right. Well, hi, Gwen. How are
Hi,
you?
Kendra. I'm good.
Well, thank you for coming on to this conversation with me. You're my first actually of my series. I'm doing a Black Warrior series. And basically what it is, it's a way to have a conversation with different people that I think are Black warriors or who are fighting for Black, Indigenous people of color and trying to help us move into a more liberated and free world. So I have worked with you in the past. I acknowledge everything that you've done, and I love, love, love hearing about everything
Thank
of who
you,
you are
Kendra.
and your perspective. So I just wanted to see if I could get a piece of your story and write it down and have it for forever.
Thank you, Kendra.
So I guess we just like get started with what's your name? How do you introduce yourself? And go from there.
I am Gwen Brown, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers.
Okay, where are you from?
I'm from Baltimore,
Born and
Seymour,
raised?
born and raised in Baltimore.
What part of Baltimore? Because I know y'all got your different sides up there.
Yeah, Baltimore is such a neighborhood claiming place. So I grew up in East Baltimore, which we didn't have a name for it then, but now it's called the Oliver community. Um,
What?
yeah, it wasn't a name. We didn't. Anyway, it was just East Baltimore. So I grew up in East Baltimore, and when I grew up in East Baltimore, I was raised actually by my grandparents, and they migrated here from Stony Creek, Virginia.
Oh,
From my grandmother came from a farm that actually is still in the family. It's been in the family for over 100 years.
that's powerful.
Yeah, and and actually at the time, I mean, most of the people in the block they migrated from someplace further south,
Hmm.
and most everyone owned their homes. I think that there were only like two renters in the neighborhood.
Hmm. So what was the Oliver community like back then when you were growing up?
It was really it was a close knit community. You live next to everybody. The janitor lived next to the teacher, lived next to the doctor. So it, there wasn't yet the black flight to the counties.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so people just really, looked out for one another, watched out for one another. The people from the South really still had that kind of communal spirit. So they really just helped each other out. Um, of course, everybody went to church. I was in church Sunday, sometimes all day, and then Wednesday for choir rehearsal, and then for some kind of Bible study or something during the week. And then in the summertime, I was there for a vacation Bible school,
Mm-hmm.
and so all of that. And if you did anything in the neighborhood that wasn't cool, then of course your neighbor got you together, and then she called grandmother, and then you couldn't say, well, no, she didn't say it, because then that was going to be a whole nother thing. And so then, oh, you calling Miss So and So a liar?
All
And so then
right.
that was that. And so yeah, school
Wow.
was like, I mean, I remember my favorite teacher. Her name was Miss Johnson. She was my third grade teacher, and I was in my 20s and walking down the street, and she still remembered me.
What?
It was crazy, but she was just like, honest, the entire year that I was in her class, it was like one person went to the principal's office. She handled everything in her classroom. She was about her business. And so it was it was like that. But then I also lived all over the I lived in various places. People in Baltimore are very territorial, and they kind of like stay in one place. But
Mm-hmm.
I've lived all over the city. I've lived in the county. So but my roots were Baltimore.
Okay. Is that because of your family moving or just you personally?
When I was younger, I lived with my sister for a while, and she lived in was Woodlawn, and we were the first black family in that neighborhood
Oh.
at the time, which was deep. And then I lived in West Baltimore for a while. Then I came back to East Baltimore. I mean, I lived in Northwest in the Gwen community. Then I came back to Bond Street. Bond Street is where I grew up. And then I moved from there, and I lived back again in West Baltimore near Drew Hill Park. And then lived there for a while, raised my kids there when they were little. And then I bought a home and the McGovern's community. So
Mm-hmm.
that's where I am now. So I've been here for probably almost 20 years.
So nobody could argue that you don't know Baltimore streets. That's amazing. It's because when I talked to a lot of Baltimoreans when I was living up there, like you said, people are very territorial. So when you did move to these different locations, is that something you encountered?
Yes, the people west side, I don't go over in East Baltimore, and east side, I don't go over in West Baltimore. And Lord, South Baltimore and North Baltimore is like different countries or something. I mean, it's just like you just didn't wander into these communities. But for me, I just went, didn't matter. I just wandered and went wherever. Now, there were certain communities when I was really, well, Baltimore was really, um, I don't know, I think I encountered more ethnic groups when I was younger because there was like a Polish neighborhood, so you would go to the neighborhood, and then there was the Polish neighborhood, then there was like the Jewish neighborhood, and then the German neighborhood. So and I would say the most diverse community was probably like southeast Baltimore, like Pigtown, and that community, because just people that migrated from the south, and there weren't other areas that were saturated where they could move into. They just lived there. So black and white folks lived there. They were all people from like Appalachia and all of those people, but then also black folk that just couldn't get into other areas of the city. They also lived there too. The only area I didn't really travel a lot to was Cherry Hill. Cherry Hill still sees itself as, even though it's part of the city, it's like across a bridge, so they don't think of themselves as the city. But I did spend time there. I did organize there later in life.
Okay, later. So I guess let's just move with that. When did you start getting into community organizing?
So when I lived in West Baltimore near in Reservoir Hill, it was my first time being laid off ever. And my kids were really young, and the school was John Eager Howard, then now it's Dorothy I. Height. So I decided to volunteer more at their school. And at the time, the parents were working with this church, Madison Avenue Presbyterian Church, to try to talk to the parents and see what they wanted in the community. And the parents said, well, we want an after school program where our kids could be safe, have something to do after school. So the idea was to have parents, educators, and community members working together to formulate this after school initiative, but to use it sort of as a Trojan horse to not only just have this after school program, to be able to organize within the school as well. So anyway, I volunteered at the school a lot, and the pastor at the time, her name was Karen Brown, said, I really think you would be good to be the program coordinator for this initiative. So the other parents agreed. So I became the program coordinator, and we had about 150 students in the after school. Wow. And I was one of the first after school initiatives through Child First Authority. I did that. I loved it. My primary the only thing that I didn't like was I felt like Baltimore City School has a tendency, and it's not just Baltimore City, but this is all over, particularly for Black children, they just limit the children. So I would say, I want the kids, let's take the kids to the museum. And they would say the kids aren't going to be into a museum, and they need a place where it's like clowns. And I mean, it was just like crazy. So I just remember we did do a field trip to the Walters, and at the time there was, the display was about these pictures from Ethiopia of Jesus, these Coptic pictures back in. And like the kids were amazed. And I said, this is a picture of Jesus. I remember telling this one young man in there, and he was like, he looks like me. And so we lost one of them, and we found him, and he was in a gift store because he wanted to get a book to show his mother that like this, and then I would want the kids to just like go to different parts of the city and just experience a lot of things. And there was a lot of pushback. So, but I did do that for a while. And so then I began to organize with the Solidarity Sponsoring Committee, which was a low-wage workers union in Baltimore City. and that was a part of Bill Baltimoreans United in Leadership Development. But it was like an offset. So what I would do is we would talk to janitors all over the city. We would meet in McDonald's and talk to custodians and bus drivers, city school bus drivers, and crossing guards, and low-wage workers that work in Baltimore throughout the city. Just phenomenal people, really resilient people.
Yeah, they hold up the city.
Yeah, they hold up the city. And so anyway, we worked on that to form a union of low-wage workers in Baltimore City. And it went well for a while. I mean, so what it was is that anybody that had a contract with the city had to pay their workers a living wage. So, and then if you didn't pay your workers a living wage, then you were penalized. So, so now you had school bus drivers and aides and all of that making a living wage. So it was the first living wage in the country. That was implemented. And so now the living wage, even in London, when London had the Olympics there, they had to pay the people that participated in the Olympics a living wage.
So you did national work that impacted international politics.
I worked alongside that, yeah.
Oh my God. You say this stuff so casually. Like, yeah, it's just,
Well, it wasn't just me. I mean, it was like us,
Right.
or other organizers, the whole entity. I was part of it.
That's powerful. Even just like thinking about how you started off just volunteering, working in an after-school program. And then it expanded from there, working with janitors. So how did you even get connected to you said it was the Solidarity
Sponsoring Committee,
sponsoring
community. And the parents said, well, we want an after school program where our kids could be safe, have something to do after school. So the idea was to have parents, educators, and community members working together to formulate this after school initiative, but to use it sort of as a Trojan horse to not only just have this after school program, to be able to organize within the school as well. So anyway, I volunteered at the school a lot, and the pastor at the time, her name was Karen Brown, said, I really think you would be good to be the program coordinator for this initiative. So the other parents agreed. So I became the program coordinator, and we had about 150 students in the after school.
Wow.
And I was one of the first after school initiatives through Child First Authority. I did that. I loved it. My primary the only thing that I didn't like was I felt like Baltimore City School has a tendency, and it's not just Baltimore City, but this is all over, particularly for Black children, they just limit the children. So I would say, I want the kids, let's take the kids to the museum. And they would say the kids aren't going to be into a museum. Or they need a place where it's like clowns. And I mean, it was just like crazy. So I just remember taking, we did do a field trip to the Walters. And at the time there was, the display was about these pictures from Ethiopia of Jesus, these Coptic pictures back in. And like the kids were amazed, and I said, "This is a picture of Jesus." I remember telling this one young man, and he was like, "He looks like me." And so we lost one of them, and we found him, and he was in a gift store because he wanted to get a book to show his mother that like this, And then I would want the kids to just like go to different parts of the city and just experience a lot of things, and there was a lot of pushback. So. But I did do that for a while. And so then I began to organize with the Solidarity Sponsoring Committee, which was a low-wage workers union in Baltimore City. And that was a part of Bill Baltimoreans United in Leadership Development. But it was like an offset. So what I would do is we would talk to janitors all over the city. We would meet in McDonald's and talk to custodians and bus drivers, city school bus drivers, and crossing guards, and low-wage workers that work in Baltimore throughout the city. Just phenomenal people, really resilient people.
Yeah, they hold up the city.
Yeah, they hold up the city. And so anyway, we worked on that to form a union of low-wage workers in Baltimore City. and it went well for a while. I mean, so what it was is that anybody that had a contract with the city had to pay their workers a living wage.
Mm.
So, and then if you didn't pay your workers a living wage, then you were penalized. So, I would, so now you had school bus drivers and aides and all of that making a living wage. So it was the first living wage in the country
Woo.
that was implemented. And so now the living wage, even in London, when London had the Olympics there, they had to pay the people that participated in the Olympics a living wage.
So you did national work that impacted international politics.
I worked alongside that.
Oh my God. You say this stuff so casually. Like, yeah, I was just,
Well, it wasn't just me. I mean, it's like us
Right.
or other organizers, the whole entity. I was part of it.
That's powerful. Even just like thinking about how you started off just volunteering, working in an after school program, and then it expanded from there, working with janitors. So how did you even get connected to you said it was the Solidarity
Sponsoring committee.
the sponsoring committee. Mm-hmm. Is that me? That is me.
Sorry. There you go. Okay.
Now. Okay, I'm back. Okay, so the Solidarity Sponsoring Committee, how did you get connected to that?
One of the organizers from Bill, he was the, no, he wasn't. I don't know if he was the lead organizer at the time. Anyway, he came to the school to do, teach house meetings to the parents and myself. And in the house meeting, he saw me and he said, well, let's do an individual meeting. And then we did an individual meeting. And so he just saw some of my organizing work at the school and thought I would be a good fit to come to Solidarity Sponsoring.
So what's a house meeting, just for people who aren't
familiar? A house meeting is it's an organizing tool to get people together to find define common interests, to find out what people's self-interests are, to try to seek out leaders. It's a tool for organizing, and it should consist of no more than 10 to 15 persons. Mm-hmm. It's not like a BI Zitch session or anything like that. It's just really a way to just kind of get people together and get them on one accord to move towards an organizing effort.
Okay. And so before you started all of this organizing as like a program coordinator and moving to the Solidarity Sponsoring Committee, did you ever consider yourself an organizer? Is that something you had done before?
No, indeed. No. No. I mean, I admired the work of organizers, people like, Fannie Lou Hamer and all of these great, and women so often don't get mentioned in organizing when people talk about great organizers, but Dorothy R. Height, I mean, it just goes, I admired the work, but I never thought of myself as that.
So what were you doing before?
Like fell into it. I actually worked at a real estate office before that. What else did I do? Oh, I worked for an insurance company before that. So I did like administrative work. Mm-hmm. Yeah, wow. I don't even know how it just fell into my lap.
Okay, but when it fell into your lap, and then was there a moment that you felt, wow, this is what I like to do, or when you felt like this is the work that I should be doing?
I guess when, because when I was a program coordinator, and I remember meeting with some parents, and I said, well, we get to run this program, and I said, well, what would you like to see? And so a couple of parents threw some different things out there, and they kept saying, well, no, we got to check with the principal. And I said, no, I said, it's our program. We get to do this. And people couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
And so I think when I saw, because it wasn't so, because we did like voter registration, and we went to City Hall, and we went to Annapolis, and this is through an after school initiative. And so you saw like everyday people like myself, and then you think about my grandmother, people like her, and they were able to just like, move something. And particularly in Baltimore, after the like in the late 70s is when the mills closed and blue collar jobs shut down, and then crack hit the streets, and then the neighborhoods just crumbled into themselves, and then people just felt lost. And like I grew up in the shadow of John Hopkins Hospital, which was just like this whole institution that always felt like it just came into communities and did what it wanted to do, and didn't consult the community and didn't include the community. And then there was like systems like that all over Baltimore. So people really felt disenfranchised. But then when I was able to work with everyday people and they would see things change on a systemic level, I was like, oh wow, well this might be a thing I could do.
Yeah, I love that when you talk about just everyday people, because I think sometimes we get this idea in our head that people who are change makers or movers are these folks sent down from the heavens to bless us all. And when it's just like moms or parents or janitors or whoever pushing us into this new generation.
And the people that you mentioned are usually the people, when I go into places, I just totally walk by those people. And I go to the people that are around them, because those are people that are just like, okay.
It's true, because even like with systems like you mentioned, Hopkins, with most places that folks live, there's a university that has claimed land, and oftentimes they don't talk to the people that are in that community first, and they just build around them, and we don't think about the impact that has in the neighborhood. But yeah, have you done any work in regards to working? Well, I guess when you connected with Build, what kind of work did you do with them?
Let me see.
What is Build, by the way?
So Build is Baltimoreans United in Leadership Development. And it is an organization. I don't know how many institutions that they have now, but it's comprised of multi-denominational faith institutions, community organizations, and that's primarily the makeup of it. And it's a part of the Industrial Areas Foundation, which is the umbrella organization. And they have sister organizations throughout the US, Canada, Australia, and the UK and Germany. It's a broad-based organization. So when I started with them, well, I shouldn't say when I started. Another thing that I did after Solidarity Sponsoring Committee, which was probably my first major organizing effort on my own, was, again, I ended up, after Solidarity Sponsoring Committee, I ended up back in the schools organizing. And I ended up at the time, which was William H. Lamell Middle School, which was rough high school, middle school, I'm sorry. And I organized there, and just in a few years from me being a program coordinator to organizing at Lamell, I saw a huge shift. It was lots of fights. Kids were getting robbed. It was just crazy. And I couldn't figure out what was happening. So I started to just do like these little individual meetings with the students. And then they told me, well, there are these gangs popping up, and we get robbed after school of our phones, and we don't know what to do. And then they want us to get into these gangs. And I said, well, why is this happening? And they said, well, we don't have anything to do. So then I started to talk to young people throughout the city. I went to colleges. I went to the Woodburn Center, which is a detention center for young men. And
this is all on your initiative? Just going,
wow. Just say, well, I just need to find out what's happening with the young people. You gotta talk to them. And this one young man said, well, He said, I'm here now, but if you don't do something, then my brother will be here as well. He said, because there's nothing to do in my neighborhood. He said, and it just needs to happen. And so then I started talking to young people in churches, but all of them, it was just this common theme. We don't have anything to do. So then Lottie Sneed, who was an organizer with the sister organization in DC, she was organizing with them for a while, and she went off to Duke Divinity School, and then she started reading about the plight of young Black men in Baltimore. She wanted to do something, so she moved back to Baltimore.
Wow.
That was her passion, and that was my passion. So then we began to work, talk to young people all over the city, and we came together with the Save Our Youth and Save Our City campaign. So we got a core group of young people. There were about 15 young people that came from all over the city, and they would come to the build office once a week, and we would teach them organizing principles. Then we had the young people talk to other young people. And so then we came up with a platform where the young people did, and when we talked to, they said, well, we want more recreation centers, more after school programs, and more community school funding. And they said, we want, summer jobs, and we want better places to live.
Okay.
They wanted their neighborhoods to look better.
Yeah.
And so Lottie and I proceeded to take them to every single recreation center in the city to see what worked and what didn't work. We took them to every single one.
Just y'all driving in y'all's own cars?
Just us driving. We would pack the kids up in our cars. She would have 4 kids in hers. I would have 4 kids in mine, or whatever. If we couldn't fit them all, we would say, well, whoever could come or meet us at the center.
Yeah, meet you there.
They would meet us there.
Whoa.
There were some dedicated young people. These young people didn't get a stipend. All they got were community service hours, but they were just like dedicated.
They wanted to see a difference.
So then we took them to a really nice recreation center in DC just to see what could be possible, and Randallstown to see what could be possible. And so then we said, okay, well, we'll work in one neighborhood to see if we can get this recreation center built. And then that was Darley Park. And so we began working. So we taught the young people the structure of how the government worked, who that council person was, what they have to do at the state, because we never wanted to speak for the young people. It should always come from them. But we wanted, if someone asked them a question, we wanted them to be knowledgeable about what it was. So anyway, they figured out, we managed to get the state funding and all that. It was $4.5 million at the time. And they broke ground, and the governor gave them like this award for it and everything. And so then they built the first new state-of-the-art recreation center in Baltimore City. Which was
what year was that?
I don't remember. It was maybe mid-2000, something like that. And then the Bill clergy members put out an initial $60,000 to leverage additional funding for summer jobs. And so then we had the young people again testify at City Hall and do all of this, and they talked to business owners, and they talked to heads of corporations and all of this kind of thing. And they managed to get, then that year managed to get an additional 2,000 summer jobs.
Whoa.
Yep, in Baltimore City.
That
was also around the same time. The summer jobs preceded the rec center. The summer jobs actually was the easier thing than the rec center. And then we fought to get additional funding for after school and community schools. And that was primarily teaching the young people a budget and where the city could find money in the budget to do that. And so we did that. But every single year we still had to fight for the money, but then we did that. And then for a better place to live, they started in Oliver, rebuilt Oliver, which is still happening. So then that happened. That we didn't play so much a part in. That was like kind of an offshoot that Bill took on its own. But
was that housing?
The housing.
Okay.
But the other 3 things, it was Lottie and I, we worked on that together.
Just y'all two spearheading it. With your band of youth.
A band of youth. But they stuck with us. And even when they all went off to like college and everything, and like stuff would happen and random protests would take place, they would call us and they would say, well,
Wow.
I don't know if we should participate in this protest because, like, what's going to happen? And why don't we sit down and demand something that's going to be like long term? I mean, we still thought that way all the way through, and it was like crazy, right? Why can't we do that? So,
yes. I just want to pick up back what you said earlier about the after school program, where when you were working with the parents, they couldn't believe they had ownership over the program and they didn't have to ask for permission. And even with these youth, where they're using words like demand and getting into rooms with people, CEOs and business owners, it seems like you're really, in your work or your life experience, breaking down those walls and the barriers between who should and should not be in the same room together. And then it sounds like you're also a teacher. Like, why did you think it was a good idea to teach kids about policy or budgets or how to stand on, like, talk to city council members?
Because young people know what they want. And they just sometimes need the tools to kind of leverage them that way. And what I can't stand, tears my skin off, is when adults give young people a speech and prop them up in front of a place and say this. That drives me crazy, because you're not giving them what they need, or you're not helping them to get what they need to be able to always do these things on their own. So when you leave with your speech, then the young people are still just standing there, right? So, I mean, young people have always been the change makers through all of the movements. It's just been young people primarily. So, but you have to know all of the inner workings, right? How everything works. So those were the primary reasons that we chose to make sure that the young people had what they needed.
Yes, you give me hype, because I'm just like, imagine if that's something that we grew up with and it's common. Imagine the type of adults we're creating. But I guess that's the point, right?
Exactly.
Oh man, okay, that's really inspiring. Thank you for sharing that. But I'm just curious now, like, I guess, had you, when working with young people, were there any challenges that came up, especially when it comes to teaching about the things that you were teaching? Is that something you came to the table with knowing, or you had to learn as you were going?
I mean, I just taught them in the same manner in which I learned to organize. So we just taught them the exact same universals that we worked with the adult leaders. We did the same thing. It wasn't anything that was different. The only thing that was different is, not all the time, but a lot of the adult leaders, they would know the political platform more thoroughly than the young people. So, like, they would know who their council people and all of that. But other than that, we just did the exact same thing.
Okay.
It wasn't anything really different that we did with them. And then we took them to, and then they did so well that other organizations were like, IF organizations, because they had not thought about tapping into young people. And so then they wanted to learn. So then we rented a van, and Lottie and I took them to New York.
Wow.
And we stayed in a hostel, my first and last time back. In Harlem. and then we left Harlem and we went and we stayed in this place. It was this huge old mansion that looked like something out of The Shining or something like that. But that's another place that we stayed, because they met with the young people at the sister organization in New York to talk about all of the organizing that they've done. But I don't know that any other organizations really tapped into it, because you cannot leave young people. That's another thing. It's like, if you say you're going to be there for them, then you have to be there for them.
Right. You better show
And
up.
that's another thing that I don't like that people do. They say that they're going to be there and invest in the young people, and then they just don't.
Yeah.
Um, so Lottie and I were determined that no, we're going to, and they were, some of them were like sixth graders, and we kept up with them through high school and college. They still ask for like references for jobs, or
Wow.
I mean, we still keep in contact with them. We still get Mother's Day and birthdays and all of
Wow.
that kind of thing. So
That lets you know you really made an impact,
yeah.
something lasting too.
Mm-hmm.
So your partner in, I don't want to say crime, your partner in liberation,
Yes,
Lottie. How did
yes.
y'all meet?
Lottie and I met before she actually went, when she was an organizer in DC, and we would come together every now and then and we just clicked. But then she went away to do divinity school.
Okay.
Her mother passed, and I don't think she went, but her mother passed away, and I think she just wanted to do something different. So she went to do divinity school, but then she came back as an organizer in Baltimore, and then we just like, our passion was young people, and so we just, kind of clicked and went from there. I actually found a letter that she wrote to me before she went off to say that she was going to go to Duke, and it was, great working with me. But that was when she was in DC, and then when she came back, and we still hang out until today. She's retired now, actually, semi-retired. Because she does have a part-time job, so we still hang out until today. Yeah.
Okay. Y'all still doing any type of work together, or just hanging out?
No, no, we just hang out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's amazing when you build those types of connections and have those stories with people. It's nice to keep in contact.
It is. Just like with you, Kendra.
Well, I guess now since we're kind of wrapping up on time, I'm just curious to know what kind of work you're doing now in Baltimore, and anything like, what are some of your proudest moments of the work that you have done?
So right now I am the Community Engagement Coordinator with Behavioral Health Systems Baltimore, BHSB, another acronym. I'm the first person to hold this position.
Not a surprise.
So BHSB is it's a nonprofit, but it's the entity that provides oversight for behavioral health providers in Baltimore City. So, like, one thing I knew in organizing is that a lot of the challenges that I saw in neighborhoods, and particularly in neighborhoods all over the city, because okay, let me start again. So I was the organizer on the ground when I was in Sandtown, Winchester, when Freddie Gray happened, which is could be a whole nother interview within itself. But I really saw in a true way how people were traumatized, not just around Freddie Gray, but just in general. And I mean, you go into the neighborhood and there was constantly for a week or more, 3 helicopters literally 24/7 going around your heads. And there was actually an armored truck that was parked at the Western District with the gun pointing to the neighborhood like this. And they shipped, you just saw busloads of officers all protecting the Western District, but not the neighborhood. It was surreal. And you would see the kids walk by all of this foolishness and going to school. And I never forget, I was at Roots and Branches one time, and I don't know why I remember this so vividly, but it was like the kids were outside trying to play with this helicopter flying around their heads, and the crime started to spike, and it was like murders in the street. And there was this one murder where a young man was killed, and it was broad daylight, and the police wouldn't cover his body and wouldn't let his grandmother cover his body. And so the kids saw this coming home from school. So it was all of this trauma.
Right.
But it wasn't like particularly in communities of color, we don't want to seek help. It's like a whole stigma attached to it. And but it's help out there. And so when I learned about this and I came into the job and I was like, I didn't know all of this stuff was happening. I wish I would have known that you all had these services, because I could have
Right.
given people some stuff when I was out there in those streets like that. So anyway, I now am the person that's really trying to break the stigma around it, provide resources to people, connect to community, connect to the providers, listen to people that have behavioral health issues or substance abuse issues, and try to figure out best ways to interact. One thing that I am proud of in current work is an initiative called HUT, Healing Us Together. So when I came into this position, I learned these two wonderful women, Patricia Cobb and Terry Alexander, and they said that they facilitated these groups called South in Sandtown. And South, they're just like, again, we talked earlier about house meetings. They're kind of like restorative circles, peer-led restorative circles, where you can go into community and it's not therapy. It's just really a conversation. But once you go through these, these groups, it's like 4 or 5 weeks, you go through these groups. And then if you find out that you need more therapy or would like therapy, then those resources could be provided. And I said, oh, well, these would work well in churches. And so then I reached out to Dr. Kevin Daniels, and he said, yeah, these would work well in churches. And so then anyway, we all got together and formed what was called HUT, Healing Us Together. It's based on the Kwanzaa principles. And we got 18 faith leaders from all over the city, someone from Immigration Outreach Service Center, and 2 community leaders. Taught them how to facilitate these meetings and all these conversations. And so now they are going to go out into their communities and be able to facilitate these conversations. And it was a part of the mental health response to COVID for Baltimore City, and as well as to the racial pandemic that we're facing right now, which is a huge part of it as well. So it's really just healing that works well, and particularly for communities of color. So
And this is for not just youth, but adults also. Okay.
This is for anyone. So young people. So there was one young person that has been facilitating these groups. So these are for anyone. These are for anyone.
And if somebody hears this conversation and they're interested in taking part, how would they do that?
They could contact me. The only thing is you do not have to necessarily be in Baltimore, because of course everything is virtual. But you do need to be connected to some people in Baltimore, because the groups are for Baltimore City residents. But you don't have to necessarily be in Baltimore to be able to facilitate these meetings. They could contact me.
Gwen Brown. Yeah. All right, cool. Well, my last question, and just to wrap all of this up, like, what continues to inspire you to do this type of work?
So it's people like Kendra. I mean, in all seriousness, it really is people like yourself, Kendra, because Lord, child, I've been out there for a good minute, and it was cute, and it's still cute, but I can't do it anymore like that. So it's people like yourself that really could do anything, but you really want to just try to find ways to uplift your people in a variety of ways, whether it's organizing, or it's through like the work that you do now, or it's working with other young people like you did when you were here in Baltimore. And I think it's just a thing that you'll continue to do, and that really encourages me. And just like to see the young people, I mean, I feel like now young people realize that they can't just protest and that's it. Like they have to, it has to, organizing or whatever has to proceed and then follow the protests. But the protests are extremely important because that brings attention to the issue, but that can't be all of it.
Right.
So I'm really inspired by all of that. So yeah, that keeps me. So,
Oh, my heart's full. Well, thank you for sharing. I really appreciate
thank
it.
you, Kendra, so much for the opportunity. I'm so honored.
Yes. One day we're gonna have to do this again because there is multiple parts to your life story if you're open to it. But I'm gonna stop this recording real quick.
Okay.